Hello and welcome everybody to today's stream. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Happy to see you all joining on this day today, and welcome to you all. Let us know in chat where you're watching this from. It's always nice to see our global audience. I'm very happy today to have a couple of one colleague actually and two dear partners of Neo4j from our partners at GraphAware today to go through our music knowledge graph, which sounds pretty cool and it started end of last year. So I'll switch on my guests today. So here we have Michael, Christophe, and Luanne. Luanne is here. All right, here we go. Let's make it like this. Welcome to you all, and thank you for joining today. How is everybody?
Great, thank you. Nice to be here again.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks for the invitation. Hello.
Hello. Hi. Thanks. Yeah, Luan, you are a regular on almost a regular on the on the stream, but it's been a while, right? I mean, last time I think we talked was for notes, so end of last year, somewhere around I think October or something maybe. So
Yeah,
a couple of months.
Yeah.
So good to see you again. We have people from overcast Seattle. Well, at least it's not a snowstorm, right? Abu Dhabi. Well, I guess that's different weather then. I guess no. Prague, Ukraine, Croatia, Spain, and Germany. So I guess it's like it's nice to see you all. Thank you for joining, and thank you for participating. We want to make this interactive as usual. So if you have any questions, if anything is interesting to you in particular, let us know and type it in chat. So I'll let's get going a little bit in today's topic. I see, Christophe, you already shared the image, so I'll piggyback on your screen. When I guess Michael, maybe you want to give that story. You had prompted that image prompted you to drive a 30 days song challenge, and that prompted you to spark an idea. Maybe you wanna give a little bit of the background here.
Sure, I'd love to. Hi. My name is Michael. I'm actually the colleague Alex mentioned. I work for Neo4j. I work in the Spring Data team, and as such, I'm quite familiar with our object mapping capabilities. And in those things, I met Luanne and Chris quite early in my work at Neo4j, so we have already a relation. That 30-day song challenge, that was a thing I did in December. A couple of years ago, I usually took the Advent of Code challenge, but a couple of things that kept me from coding more stuff. And what I like about it was a funny thing to present some nice music. For example, a song you like with a color and a title, or a song you never get tired of. And it was just fun because it's a broad topic I have, at least for myself in store. There was stuff ranging from Schlager to Grindcore, and I had quite a lot of fun playing this thing. Now, as I said, Luanne, Chris, and I share a relation with that Neo4j object graph mapping tool for a long time. And I did presentations in the past of it, and I usually used I used Neo4j and the object mapping tool like I would do with relational databases, pretty much made up a static graph containing musical artists, albums, and tracks and whatnot. And because I have all this, I was super happy, surprised to see Chris coming up with the idea of first playing that whole music challenge with me and a couple of other folks on Twitter. And a lot of folks from GraphAware joined us. And they came up with the idea of putting that into Hume and Neo4j finally. And this is where I would like to take Chris or Luanne over.
That's cool. And music is always a great topic. So I guess that's why a lot of people participate and everybody feels like this is interesting, and everybody has something to share, right? I mean, this is perfect to start with. This is similar to the movies graph we use a little bit as our intro, because everybody, and who doesn't watch a movie, so you always know, okay, this is a movie I'd like to watch, that add it to a graph. And this is same thing, who doesn't listen to music, only a very sad person, I think. And yeah, it's cool. Shall we? Do you? Let's maybe start with a quick round of introductions before we dive into from Luanne and Chris, and then let's go into the session. Yeah, Luanne, ladies first.
Okay, so yes, I'm Luanne. I run engineering and GraphAware, and I've been working with Neo4j for I don't know about 11 or 12 years now, a very very long time. I love graphs. I love being on Neo4j events, and yeah, and today we want to actually show you what we did with Michael's, the song challenge, which was really fun. We picked it up and put it into the graph, and it spread through GraphAware as well, which I think is the beauty of graphs, right? It connected a lot of people. And we want to show you it's a work in progress, but we want to show you what we've been doing with it. Yeah, and we also have like exciting stuff for developers as well. So with that, I will pass on to Chris to introduce himself.
Thank you, Luanne. Thank you, Alex. And thanks for inviting me. So I'm Chris. I'm CTO at GraphAware. So I've been also using part of the Neo4j community since a long time. So I had, of course, a lot of fun with this 30-day songs challenge, because combining music and graphs is a beautiful mix. So without waiting, I will start with some introduction of the knowledge graph itself. So we'll switch here to Hume, actually. So Hume is it's called an insights engine or a knowledge graph platform. It's really meant to connect multiple data sources together in a knowledge graph and deliver insights from it, right? So there are a couple of concepts. I cannot make a really only Hume introduction. We want to cover really the music knowledge graph and all the fun we had. So I'll just go quickly through some concepts, so then we can go into the fun stuff. So in terms of concepts, so as every knowledge graph, it needs to have a schema, because schema describe really in which domain you are, what are the entities in your domain, and the relationships among them. So this is really what you see here, right? So you have songs, which are really in the center of this knowledge graph, have a lot of relationship. And then from this song sparks a couple of concepts like album, artist, persons, lyrics, etc. Right? So this schema was really driven by the additions we could do by connecting different services and data together. And then from the schema, you go down to the perspective level. In a nutshell, a perspective is a slice of the schema against a Neo4j database, right? So it has a lot of additional features. But for example, you see here, this is the schema, it's full. So it means we allow everything to be seen in the schema, and we connect to a Neo4j database called Luanne songs, right? So once we have this perspective, so this connection between the schema and a Neo4j database, we can visualize data, right? So you can see here main perspective. So I can go to the visualization, open a visualization with the main perspective and see the data. So we can see here that we have 386 songs, 442 artists, etc. Right? So to really show the schema concept, I will create a new, the perspective concept. I will create a new perspective called sliced against, again, the Luanne songs database. And I will, for example, remove a couple of things that are not useful for that perspective. So if you think about knowledge graph 360, but it can also be for security reasons. So I can, for example, remove the person here that shared the songs, right? So this means that now if I want to visualize the data with this perspective, so sliced visualization, and I have to choose the right perspective because I have access to all of them. Right? You can see that now I don't have persons that share the data and share the songs anymore, right? So really you can do slicing, but not only, so you can give slice to groups of users. For example, like here, I can grant access to the perspective to only analyst type, for example. And I can also tune the search. So for example, in this perspective, I can say that when I search in Hume, songs should be more relevant than artists for another perspective. So another group of users, maybe genres or Grammys are more important. So the same string would be reflecting first other entities than in another perspective, right? So yeah, so I think we covered schema, perspectives, and now visualizations. So as you already saw one of them, so this is not mine, sorry, I will use this one. So in the visualization itself, here we see an overview of the database, but I can search, for example, I can search for AC/DC. Here we can, of course, do simple thing like expanding, etc. But Luanne will cover more details about what you can really do with actions, etc. But as you can see here, so on this node, I can expand, for example, similar songs based on genre, etc. Right. So I will give the word to Luanne right now. And yeah, if you have any question, please ask them in this chat. I will answer while I'm waiting. Thank you. So we have to switch the screen to Luanne.
Yep, let me share right now. Just a second. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen, right, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I want to take you briefly through how we built this graph, right, where it started and where it is today. And as I said, it's very much work in progress. So you'll see a lot of concepts from different people at GraphAware trying out various things. And it's a lot of fun. So of course we started replying to Michael's tweets with songs we liked. Then we have a Slack channel called Music in GraphAware, and the people in that, Chris shared the category, and people started, giving us a link to the song they liked, and then I wanted to put it into Hume, right? So the easiest thing for me to do was to take it and put this information into a CSV. Well, it started off as a CSV. It was then opened up to everyone to put in their choices on a daily basis, and really simple, right? So we have a tag based on what the day was, and the URL. So everyone was just sharing the YouTube video, so that was kind of convenient. The name of the song, the artist, and who shared it, right? And as you can see, as the challenge progressed, we had a huge amount of data. So what we did with this is we using Orchestra in Hume. So Orchestra is a way to bring data from various data sources or other systems all together into the knowledge graph, right? So we'll show you a very simple workflow. So earlier we had, of course, the CSV file, but ignore that for now. And what you see here is a workflow that basically runs every hour, and it reads this Google spreadsheet and processes the data to write it to Neo4j. So I'm using something called OpenSheet, which allows me to access the sheet without too much hassle. What it gives us is JSON data, but at the end of it is what all Cypher users will see is very familiar. It's just a merge a set of merges to take the columns, the data and the columns from the sheet, and write it to Neo4j. So this is how the graph was born. We only had tag songs, artists, and the people that shared them. So let's go to a visualization and have a bit of a look at what it looks like, right? So as Chris was showing you, these are all the these are the classes that this whole graph has actually grown to. So let's start with let's look at people that have shared songs. Okay, so mostly disconnected clusters, except a couple, you know, that share the same song, right? From here, there are various ways to play with this graph. Of course, on the canvas, you can expand out through various relationships. You can change layouts, for example. But what I want to show you today is slightly different. A couple of cool things that we kind of discovered or did along the way, right? So we have concepts of actions, and actions are a way to basically run more complicated explorations or analysis in one package, right? So I could potentially go to a node and double click and expand it, right? And then from there make sense of the graph, right? Look at the properties, figure out whether I want to expand it or not. But what actions do is they kind of package this into one quick run, right? So let's go to a song over here, and there are various actions, right? So one of them, for example, is show tags of the song, right? So this one was just color. There are also cool things that actually Chris built, which was to be able to preview the song, play the video from within the knowledge graph, right? And this was super handy because we were exiting the knowledge graph to check out the song, but now you don't even have to leave Hume to do that. The other cool things we did was, so if you go to Wikipedia and look at the song, you'll find that at the bottom, at least for most songs, there are a bunch of categories. They're fairly good. I wouldn't say they're perfectly accurate, but they are insightful. So what we did is we started to pull in song categories. Let me clear this. And you will see that there were a bunch of people actually sharing songs that spoke about war in some way or another, right? So if we expand this and see songs about war, I thought this was actually cool because like this was a song specifically that I remember, Trooper, which was shared by Yuho, that I had no idea it was about the Crimean War. So, and I have an interest in this. So I discovered a new song, right? So it's pretty amazing. Other things you can do. So let's look at an action, right? What is an action composed of? So I'm going to take songs that won a Grammy because it's really, really simple. So we have two kinds of actions. You have actions that are visible globally, right? So they just run across the entire graph, and then you have those that are local to maybe a node or a group of nodes or a relationship, and they kind of act in that sort of neighborhood of that node or relationship. But essentially, an action is cipher, right? So as long as you can express how you want to traverse the graph in cipher and return, in this case, a path, you could return columns and have a table or a chart as a result. Then you're pretty good, right? So you package all these things into an action, and then you do things like, let's see, songs that won a Grammy. Yep. And you'll see that there's this, there was this period around, where was it? Yeah, around the 37th Grammy Awards, where a lot of people, around 1994, where people actually shared quite a few songs, right? So this is what you can do. Well, this is very little of what you can do in the visualization, but again, I want to just go back to Orchestra and show you how we extended this graph very briefly. So these are all workflows from people at GraphAware that have tried to bring in a lot of data. Simple things that we did, right? We use the iTunes API, which is very easy to use, to look for the artist and pull in the genre of the artist, right? So basically, get it from iTunes, find the artist, pull out the genre, and add it to the graph. And then within, like, I don't know, 10 minutes, we had already expanded the graph to have genres. We did the same thing with Wikidata later. We did the same thing with the Grammy Awards. So we had a data set which had the Grammy Awards, and the only thing we had to massage a bit was to actually split it into whether it was awarding a song or an album or an artist, because it was just one giant file. We were able to do that, and as you can see, the end result is really, cipher, right? So read the data, match it up to parts of the graph, and then write it. So we had workflows like this. And we started to pull in genres, right? So we pulled in iTunes, we pulled in Wikidata, and they were not always the same. So some of the things that you will see over here, let me go back to the visualization. So for example, you could do things like, let's say, because we pulled in the genres of both the artist, the artist and also the song where it was available, you can actually do an interesting things like in this mix of artists are basically artists that have had maybe the odd song here or there, which isn't really typical of their genre. So if we go to Aerosmith, for example, have a look at their songs, right? Have a look at their genres and well, at least the songs that were shared in this knowledge graph. You're going to find this one, which is fairly atypical of Aerosmith, and then that's pretty true, I guess, right? So cool stuff like this. So taking it further, we had. I'm going to show you another workflow. So this was put together by Federica from our data science team. And what she did is she wrote this workflow which uses GDS under the covers, right? So both the genres, right? And she was testing to see which of them would produce the best kind of clustering we had around people and songs. So inside here is Cypher, and for example, the similarity calculations. And then for people that are familiar with it, you're basically running the node similarity and community detection, right?
Should maybe add what GDS stands for. Maybe not everybody knows that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the graph data science library that is available with Neo4j. So various grouped into quite a few algorithms around community detection, clustering, similarity, and so on and so forth. Super handy to try out, directly on your graphs. So what this produced at the end of the day was some sort of communities, right? And if you have a look at them, they are pretty good because she actually combined quite a few factors. And we're going to have a look at person, and then we're going to turn on the grouping, right? So this represents quite well, I would say, GraphAware. So you see in the largest cluster here, and the size, of course, of the clusters differ, but in the largest cluster, you have the set of people, right? And the next set of cluster is this set of people. Now, it would be really nice for to have a look at what what genres they listen to, I can basically go out and expand all the songs and then all the genres, and it would be kind of a mess, but I will show you a better way of doing that. So let me go to the perspective. So this is what Chris showed you, but I have a different one because I'm just interested in a subset of the whole schema, right? So as you can see, the genre here is related to the artist and to the song. We were able to extract mostly all of them between iTunes and Wikidata. So what we are going to do here is, for convenience, we're going to define a virtual relationship by genre. Okay, directly between the person and the genre, right? And we're going to define what that looks like because we're going to say that because a person shared a song and the song has a genre, we can say fairly safely, not always accurately, but fairly safely that this person likes this genre, right? And that's the virtual relationship we're going to create. Let's go back to the visualization. Okay, and you can see now that my virtual relationship shows up over here, right? And I can expand it. So you will see, let me just close that. This group of people, right? Fairly diverse. And then there is the smaller group here. Yep, so some similarities, but you can see all the, let's see, all the electronic music people, sitting on the right, and all the metal hard rock sitting on the left, with some bridge the gap, I would say, between them. So this is pretty cool, right? Because with the virtual relationships, it removes all the clutter of expanding through songs and then artists, and then removing the ones you don't want to see. So this is super handy. And the last thing that I will share, because I want to give some time to Chris to actually show you some more stuff, is at the end of all this, right? Okay, it's cool that it's in Hume, but where is Orchestra? Yeah. But Greg actually wrote a workflow. Yeah, so he wrote a workflow to really query this knowledge graph and export to Spotify. And that was really nice because, over the new year, if anyone ran out of music to listen to, we ended up with 363 songs and over 24 hours of music. And these are all the songs that people in GraphAware have shared. So it's pretty amazing. We had ingestion into the graph and then export back out to Spotify, all through Hume. Yeah, and I think this is it for now. Let's move to Chris, and then maybe we can come back to Hume to see if you have any questions. Okay, Chris. Are you speaking?
Oh, I think you're muted, Chris.
Yes, sorry. It's only 2 years we are in that. So, right. So my screen is back. I will show two, I would say, amazing features of Hume that are actually very new. So they have been released yesterday, actually. So the first one is the ability to traverse the graph without knowing cipher. So you saw that Luanne was able to actually map a cipher query, like for an action, here to right-click on a node or something in the search bar, right? So this is really the purpose of action, is to be able to do domain or custom traversals, custom queries, and have them handy for non-developers at the end of the day, so they can really just use it from the UI, right? But you cannot, of course, invent and all the use case that people will want to do. So you can actually traverse the graph much more easily. So let me start again from AC/DC. Here, you will have guessed that I am an AC/DC fan already by now. Right, so I will right-click here on this node, and I will do what we call advanced expand. So we'll just click here, and I have my starting node. So now I can actually say continue from the artist to songs. So I will say, okay, find me all the songs from AC/DC that have been shared by someone. And that someone should have shared other songs that have a genre. And this genre might be part of another genre where, let's say, the parent genre is metal. Right? So here we go. Without too much effort, I can describe this long traversal. Right? And I can click here, and it actually returns the data. So I can actually show in a better way. I can go here on AC/DC and choose hierarchy layout instead. Right? So you can see we start from AC/DC, the songs that persons have shared from AC/DC, other songs that are part of the parent genre metal. Right? So this is a very nice feature to allow actually humans, non-developers, to use Hume and Neo4j graphs under the hood. Right. So the other feature that I want to mention, and this is where I want to come back to the importance of perspectives, is connecting to Hume from third-party applications. Right. So we can actually, we have a lot of features, right? So we have virtual relationships, we have actions, we have the schema, etc. So all those predictability, because it's typed, it's fixed, can be exposed through an API, right? And what better API than the GraphQL API? So we have the concept of what we call perspective API, right? So perspective can be exposed to end users through GraphQL. So how that works, actually, you have to create in the system an API key. You will receive a token that you can use to authenticate against Hume, and then you can connect to a perspective, right? So I will actually here have this external app perspective, right? And you will see here, I allow this perspective to be used by the external app role, which is actually the role connected to that key, right? So if I go to GraphQL, so here is a GraphQL editor, right? So with Insomnia, so I can get the schema of the perspective. So we'll refresh the schema here and show the documentation. Here you can see in the URL, I am connected actually to the songs knowledge graph and the external app perspective. So if I go here, query, right, I see that we have actually the schema, album award, artist, etc. So I can actually query songs title, for example. Here I can send, and it connects the songs. So I query the song, I can query album, right, first two, and here we'll return everything. So you will see we have a small additional feature, not very GraphQL typical sometimes. So here I have a virtual field to say I want all the properties of the node, right? So here I have everything, etc. Right? But you will see the importance. So let me go back to the song. You will see the importance of the perspective and how it enables actually to manage as well applications. So let me first two, and I will do all here. Interesting. Oh, it's not like this. So you can see here, I have a song, two songs, right? And you can see here Spotify URI, right? But maybe I don't want to expose this data to the GraphQL APIs, right? So what I can do, I can just go here, external app perspective, and I define that the Spotify URI is not visible in that perspective. Automatically, application will not have access to this data anymore. I can just click send. You see, it disappeared from the response I am receiving, right? Okay, I clicked, sorry. I wasn't expecting that the link would work. Yes, now let's speak about actions. So I can actually enable external application to have very complex queries. So let's not take too much complex, but for example, let's say that I want to have an action that is get me immediately all the lovers of AC/DC. So I can go to the visualization and create an action. So we'll add a new action. Oh, it's already here, actually, sorry. AC/DC lovers, right? So, right, this is the query. So finding the artist AC/DC, who shared songs about this artist, and return the users, right? So if I would run this action, it would return all the persons at GraphAware that have shared songs about AC/DC, right? Now I can just say this action can also be usable in the external app perspective. So accessible from GraphQL. Now, I go back to my GraphQL editor. I refresh the schema. I show the schema. Up, automatically we have the action available here, right? So it is usable for me in my GraphQL endpoint. And here is my data, right? We can also have inputs, right? So for example, I can rename the action not from AC/DC lover, but for example, band lovers, right? And instead of hard coding to AC/DC, I want to use a parameter name that the user will have to provide. And I give a parameter here, name, string, name. It is required and it will be a string, right? So if I would run again this action here, band lovers, and not name, not AC/DC, but I would type RSMF. I submit, and it finds all the people that shared songs about RSMF, right? And this action now is also available immediately in the GraphQL perspective API. So I have to refresh the schema. See here, the action is no more valid because I renamed the action, right? Action band lovers. So I can do here, band lovers, and I will have to provide a name, Smith, and I do have my data. So here are nodes and relationships if we want to. I can also change the action to not be nodes and relationships, but to be a table, for example. So I can change here, not return a graph, but return a table. And I can do return with distinct user, return user, and return everything as a map, for example. All right, and then if I click here, band lovers, Smith, I submit, I have a table, and of course, running the same from here would return me now table. Right, so yes, this is in terms of action, perspective API, action scoping. So you saw that I can decide that action can only be visible in certain perspective. This is very good for security. So you can constrain the usage of action to a certain group of people, but also for use case, where you can say, okay, for jar editing or working with Wikidata, I will allow those actions in the perspective so people can remain focused, etc. Right. So I also want to show that actions are not limited to query data. You can also write data back to the graph, right? So here you can see there is a user like song, but there is no data actually. You see it's grayed out, and it's because there is no data in Neo4j, right? So actually I have an action that is called I like this song. Yes, here. I like this song too. So actually in Hume, everything is connected to a user at the end of the day. So you connect with your user account. So this user information can be used also as part of action. So you can see here, I can use the what we call Hume principle. So it is actually my username in Hume. So I can use it to create a user in Neo4j in the graph if I want to. So I can connect, for example, relationships from my user to nodes in the graph. Right. So to give you an example, I can go here, ACDC, right? So me as a user of Hume, as a user of a knowledge graph, I can investigate songs. So we'll change the layout. And here, whole load of Rosie is not shared by me, but I can say, I like this song. Right. So I can click here. I like this song too. Right. So what happens is that you see here, there is a user that now likes song whole load of Rosie. Right. So now I connected my user to the graph, so which means that based on what I like, I can receive recommendation as well. Now, so for example, there is recommend me song. So here I find myself in the graph, and based on the song I like and what the people that have shared that song shared as well, you will recommend me those songs, right? So it's very simple, but I can go here, global, and say recommend me songs, and now it recommend me those songs, right? So even you can also specify that you want to highlight the nodes when the result is returned from the action, right? So we are very we have a lot of features for actions. So you can see here recommend me songs, right? I can decide which node IDs to highlight, and etc. Right? So we can really create experiences. Right, so that's it on the GraphQL / advanced expansions. Maybe I can give the word back to Luanne in case you want to add something to that.
No, not really. I think we were happy to take questions or have a bit of a discussion. Alex, Michael?
Yeah.
I have, so first of all, to say thank you for the excellent presentation. And I have a ton of questions, actually.
That's good.
How is this thing deployed? Is Hume only available on-prem, or do you offer this as only available on cloud, or can I run this on-prem? And what's the whole architecture of it? Where does Neo4j sit? Is Neo4j only used for the graph data itself, or do we also have a second graph containing the schema data? So probably not every listener knows this. Neo4j itself is schema.
Less.
Not exactly schema-less, I would say, but
Free.
very relaxed scheme, so to speak. Do we have a separate database for the scheme, or
Yes.
yeah? I think there's a bunch of questions already.
So yeah, on that side, the architecture is like the application itself is a front end and two Java backend services, one for the UI and management, and one dedicated to Orchestra. Right? So we have, let's say, 3 containers, Docker containers. We don't today offer Hume as a service in the cloud. Of course, we can deploy Hume in the cloud because it's at the end is Docker containers, but our real market today is on-premise. Right? But because we are on-premise first, we can run in any cloud, right? So, so we have customers, of course, using AWS or Azure or Kubernetes, etc. Right? So, Neo4j is to us external to Hume. I mean, we rely heavily on Neo4j, of course, right? Because the visualization needs graphs, etc. But it means it's in terms of concept in Hume, Neo4j is really. Let me click here. Connected with what we call a resource, which is a connection details to resource. Because in one visualization, you can also combine multiple Neo4j databases if you want to. So for example, an action can query data in a second Neo4j database and combine it into the same visualization, for example. So yeah, this is how it works. But we can also connect to any Neo4j, so we are compatible with Aura, of course. We still support Neo4j 3.5 and onwards. We will probably drop support for 3.5 at some point, but yeah. So the application data is stored in Postgres, right? So everything you see that is not graph data, what I mean by graph data is the data that you see in the visualization, not the schema, the data. Is stored in Postgres. So Neo4j is storing the graph data, or the application data is stored in Postgres. So, yeah.
Makes completely sense to me, at least. I remember my older presentation where we actually had slides of a multi-database approach for the topic. Interesting. And the backends are Java then, and you were speaking exclusively via the Java driver with the Neo4j backend.
Yes. So we use exclusively Java for backend services. This also helps us to leverage the ecosystem provided by Neo4j. So for example, we use the GraphQL Java library provided from Neo4j to power the Perspective API, even if we do additions, like we use as a main base the GraphQL API provided by Neo4j, and same for the Cypher DSL, which is a very, very nice library provided by somebody on this call. So we use it mainly for the no-code expansions. So this is very good for generating queries. Today, the visualization itself is still powered by custom queries everywhere. But because we were there before this tooling was existing, so yeah. But yeah, so we
there were tons of things I really like. GraphQL is often sold as little or no code approach, but the way you did it in your perspectives and the custom actions, this is actually really, really low code, especially for someone using Hume then via the external app perspective. I really like that. It was a great thing to show. And with regards to Orchestra, is this something custom, or do you use like Kafka or stuff like that behind to listen for events or whatever?
Okay, for Orchestra, it's really we created a framework on top of an existing framework. Right? So we are really based on
as one does, right?
So we are based on Apache Camel, which is a very mature enterprise integration framework. It's very maintained and sponsored also by Red Hat. So it's very a pleasure to work with. And yeah, so it can run standalone as well, right? So it doesn't need the full Hume package. It can be deployed independently. Yeah, so this is a custom exposure of the Camel capabilities, but with a better experience, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, we are very driven towards graph applications and graph-based solutions. So this means that all the components that we built around Camel are for working generally with graphs or graphs plus machine learning, right? So this is why, the features we build are unique in a sense that this is really for graph-based applications, right? And what our customers are needing in the graph space, right? In every industry using graphs, actually. So this is cool.
Yeah, excellent. I'm really impressed here. Thanks for answering my question. There was one more thing in the Slack from Joseph, whether you can show an analysis from the top down instead of the bottom up. Like, would it be possible?
We don't have millions of nodes, but Chris, you have the screen. Maybe you want to expand some more, but we definitely don't have millions in the sound graph.
Yes, so we don't. We're not really meant towards big graph visualization. So this is a fact, right? So we can support from 5 to 10,000 nodes on the canvas. It also depends on your hardware, but really we don't optimize for it. So we have a minimum benchmark that we need to handle. But yeah, so this is a different way of seeing data. So I think that our use case are not meant towards this finding networks or patterns in the data by visualization. I think it's very different. Right? So maybe one day we will have this, but today is not our focus. So no, we cannot really do this type of the cybersecurity is a big fan of this type of visualization, like log analytics, etc.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. I'm personally a fan of focusing of doing one approach correctly. So, and we also have Bloom for the other thing from Neo4j, doing a top-down analysis. So.
What I liked a lot was this, and Michael, you already hinted a little bit on it. Was this no code, low code approach when you click together your query to visualize the path, and you had always this drop down menu to the left, and you click the next relationship, and then you came back. That was, for me, that was super interesting and very powerful, because that's exactly when you find your way around, especially. I mean, if you, yeah, exactly this one here, the advanced expand. If you don't have, I mean, at some point your data set, I guess, and you can type it in manually, but directly probably quicker. But if you don't quite know, okay, is there a connection? Is there some relationship between these nodes? Is how does it work exactly? To explore this is, to me, this is really good. Yeah.
I agree. And also, I like that hierarchical layout a lot. That's often how my brain works when I traverse such things, and this is nice.
Yeah.
Yes, for some insights, it's much better.
Yeah. That's very cool. Super cool. Coming back one more time to the actual music graph, was there? I mean, you imported it all, and you had the whole company joined in, and I think, Luanne, you said you discovered a new song that you didn't know before, and you liked. Was there another moment like this where you said, hey, actually, this is a band, or this is a song I probably should like, or I never thought this would come up, and now I realize this is some insight, some revelations, maybe even.
Yeah, I mean, to see what people were sharing every day, there were a lot of artists that I listened to that people were sharing songs about, right? And and you think you know an artist inside out, but then someone goes and shares a song that you just haven't heard before. So I think that was pretty cool. Um, the other thing that I really liked was, of course, the categories or the meanings behind the songs, right? So I think some of those days were really fun, where you have songs which people think are about what was it, weddings or love or something like that, but they're not. So those sorts of things were really interesting, right? So if we and that was the effort behind the categories, to try and pull together really the meaning behind the songs. And it really depends. For me, it was interesting to kind of look at that cluster around the war songs, and actually go and research it a bit more and find out what's behind it. So I found that really interesting, and of course, that's how I discovered the other song. But the graph is in a very good place, I would say, at the moment, for us to build on, really some more recommendations rather than the exploration. I think we should be able to produce some pretty decent recommendations out of this. Yeah, I think we also have a couple of properties that were pulled in from Spotify, like the tempo of the song and the balance of the song. So you'll see that there are some relations in there, like similar to. So that as well will be probably interesting to see how how if you're building the kind of playlists that are suggested to you on iTunes or rather Apple Music and Spotify, if you are songs to exercise to, which I don't do, by the way. But if I did, then I would probably use this to actually create a playlist, right? So yeah, there are tons and tons of possibilities. We're just getting started, actually.
Super. Are you planning to expose this somewhere, or will people be able to access this, or is this is there some way to try? Is it a way for people to try, basically?
So Chris, the
So we have exposed the graph to GraphQL publicly. So if you want to be able to access and show a cool use case for an application, we are happy to share with you an API token that you can use. For some reasons, we cannot expose the application itself today in the cloud to the public. So yeah, but we can expose the GraphQL API for sure. So yeah.
Cool.
And it's already exposed. We already tweeted. So if you want to have fun with the song's knowledge graph, just send us an email and we can send you an API key.
Perfect. Sounds good. And if people are eager to try Hume now, what's the best way to do that?
Info@graphaware.com is the best way.
All right. Perfect.
I will add a shameless plug.
Go ahead. Now's the time.
Because we do a lot of fun stuff and very cool stuff, and we don't plan to stop. We are actually looking for colleagues. So yeah, if you want to work with the amazing Hamza in your team and build custom application, graph application, front end, back end, sales, everything, we are looking for a lot of people. So just come to graphaware.com/careers and find the open position and apply. Thank you.
Super. Post the link to you one more time in chat. Michael, did you have any last questions? Anything else you wanted to say?
I can speak my mind. I mean, if Chris, if you can just hit on the orchestra perspective again, that would be nice on the view, and then just open up one of the bigger ones. I mean, looking at those pipelines, it reminds me of, kind of good old web days, actually. I find this so cool that we can integrate so many different data sources and things over Camel into like two excellent databases into Postgres and Neo4j. It's brilliant. I know
Chris,
that
maybe
there are a
you
lot
want to
of
open the
people
component. Sorry, Michael. I was just telling Chris to open the components just to give you an idea of what you can actually plug into Orchestra.
Sure.
The add components.
For example, here it pulls out data from Neo4j, right? So you can see the streams, and then with Python,
I know that there are a lot of
actually
people on a call probably thinking more in graph analysis, but this is really something that speaks to me in terms of usage and of integrating data and bringing stuff together and creating more value than from a single source. This is excellent presentation.
Yes, this is really what we do, providing value by connecting data.
Yeah, that's excellent approach. So that's all I had in my mind the whole time. So thanks for that.
And I guess that's, you do you want to, add components. I guess this is fairly easy, and then to just looks like drag and drop, and then you connect it, and then it's there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, all the components here. Yes, it's drag and drop. Almost no code, I would say, low code, because you still need to write a bit of Cypher or a bit of Python if you want to do complex transformation. But yeah, this is it takes minutes.
Cypher and declarative stuff like that is a different level of code, I'd say. In my OGM talks, I had some custom Java code for getting Wikipedia data. It's different than writing just a query to pipe stuff along.
Yeah. Yes.
Super. I think that gives us or leads us to the end of the session. Any last plugs you want to put in, or anything else you want to say, Luanne and Chris?
No. I'm good. Thank you.
We've been shameless enough for today. You have the links to GraphAware. You know that we're hiring. I think that pretty much covers it.
Cool. All right. Well then, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Luanne. Thank you, Chris, for joining today and for presenting. This was really astonishing, and I think we covered how great we feel this is. But I definitely just wanted to say one more time, so easy and so well done in terms of, you can even watch YouTube in there. So I guess this this is in a new dimension. I'm
One more thing. Moment.
Yeah,
Perfect.
exactly. Yeah. If you don't want to work, you just you work on a completely complicated Hume project, and then in the end you just watch YouTube. But I guess that's not what we're gonna do today. No, thank you for presenting, and thank you for showing this. This is a cool tool, and it was, I think, a cool concept, and cool content with music, thank you for participating. Thank you, chat, for the questions. Again, if you want to find more, follow us on YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. You can find GraphAware obviously at GraphAware graph_aware, and follow them as well on Twitter. Until then, I thank you all for watching. I hope you have a good time. See you soon on one of our next sessions. Until then, take care, everybody, and goodbye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
See you, Michael. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you then.